We can turn our Bibles to Matthew chapter 17. For those who have their Bibles. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him, verse 1, Peter, James, and John, his brother, and led them up to a high mountain part. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses, Elijah, talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is well, or it is good, that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 booths here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, lo, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Loving Father, Papa, you share your heart, your fatherly, eternal heart, that the disciples might see, know, hear. What is your opinion of Jesus, so to speak? Beloved, well pleased. And Lord, when we've lacked the blessing, we don't feel beloved, and we don't feel you're pleased with us unconditionally. So I ask you now, Lord, to express what must be said, Papa. Come, Papa. I ask that our angels go to the Trinity to ask God to send help, other angels to assist us, to inspire me. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. Come, Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You probably have guessed it. If we did not receive the blessing, we never felt truly in our deepest part as son. We might have known it in our heads, but never felt son. I'll never forget, my father was interviewed for a Catholic newspaper, and my twin was about to be ordained a priest. I was next in line. And the Catholic newspaper reporter asked him, so how does it feel to have in your house, your home, 2 sons that are going to be priests? Now, my brother, my twin, showed me the article, and he said, who do you think answered this? And he read it. And my father said, that's their life, they can do with it what they want. That was his response. When you get an answer like that, you don't feel like he's behind you, to say the least. You don't feel like he's in your corner. In fact, you barely feel he approves. And as there was that same distance, his answer was off the cuff. That's their life. That's the way a son feels, or a daughter, if they were not fathered with the blessing on a daily basis. You feel alone, and you feel you have to face life, and you have to roll up your sleeves and muster the strength to do what you must do. Thank God, by then, I was 29, so my conversion had happened 9 years before, I already knew on a heart level the final word of who I am is not my Father's opinion of me. It's God's opinion of me. So I was already, so to speak, was surviving the wreckage of a life on a heart level not having been fathered. I already could pick myself up, and that statement of his did not crush me. It would have crushed me before the age of 20. By then already, I knew, because see, when I entered the seminary, I was engaged to be married with a wonderful Catholic girl, a girl from Cali, Colombia. And I thought that was God's plan. And when my father found out and my mother found out that I felt called to be a priest, and I'm not going to get into how that even happened now, it's not important, because it was a call and Jesus did speak in my heart. And I broke up the relationship. Neither of them spoke to me. My mother said, "Don't get near me." Of course, they were probably thinking of having grandchildren through me and that. So, in a sense, when one is never a son, whenever one has received the blessing, you feel like basically you raise yourself. You raise yourself. You form yourself because they weren't involved. This is the most deepest issue because they're not involved in your heart. They can't connect. So you have to be, so to speak, strong. And you think, to be a priest, I have to be strong. To be a celibate, I have to be strong. And to go into adulthood, I have to be strong. There's one problem. The truth is, we really are not. And I'll never forget my spirit director in the seminary, Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Emmitsburg, Maryland. He asked us in our class of seminarians, "Are you weak enough to be a priest?" For me, that was like, come on, I had to learn how to fight. I took karate. Had to be strong. Now, thank God in our seminary, we went to a very good seminary. It was very common in our seminary for young men to pray 2 or 3 hours before the Blessed Sacrament every day. Like nothing. It was unquestioned. The example we received from our from our priests in the formation staff were men that prayed and prayed and prayed. We also were formed to learn how to get into our hearts. In other words, it wasn't this type of just academically you're involved, but you stay away from your heart. No. We were taught a well-integrated formation program. And my spirit director, who headed that spirituality of the formation program in Mount St. Mary's, asked us, "Are you weak enough to be a priest?" That goes against the majority. Because most of us have maybe thought, I have to be strong. I couldn't cry. By the way, at the age of 20, I learned how to cry. And cry well. But up to the age of 20, I couldn't cry. I didn't cry. Men don't cry. My father used to tell me if he saw me crying, if he beat me, if you cry, I'm going to give you more reasons to cry. So you stuff it. Your heart becomes hardened. If it becomes hardened, you can't get close because you can't even get in touch with yourself, let alone get in touch with others. And celibacy is a matter of, if you use that school of thought, I have to be strong. There's one problem. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 18 verse 3, "Unless you become like little children, you will not enter the kingdom of God." Unless you become small, weakened like a child, You can enter, you cannot, the kingdom of God cannot really enter. God cannot be who He wants to be for you. Everything, the strong one, the one in your corner, the one who carries you, the one who gives you all the grace you need to enter into adulthood and be what I know now to be a favorite son in the Son, Jesus Christ. How does God do this? He has to weaken us. If you were to read the book of Judges, chapter 7, the judges were called to be leaders in the time of Israel during times of crisis. Samson, Deborah, a woman. But now Gideon, in Judges chapter 7, he had to fight the Midianites who had over 125,000 soldiers. Gideon tried to get out of it twice. He even said, if this is really from you calling me to do this, because the Midianites were bad people, and you're asking me to face them to protect Israel and to lead Israel through this crisis, he said, he put a fleece, a piece of wool, and he said, if this is really you, make the wool outside wet and the ground around it dry. So God did that. And then when that's done, he said, I hope you're not angry, but let's try it another way. Make the wool, the fleece, dry and the ground around it wet. The opposite. So God does that. So he shows up with 32,000 men. This is in Judges chapter 7. And this is the way God fathers us. And God tells him, you're too many, you're too strong. I would have dropped my mouth like, you mean they have 125,000 men and we have 32,000 and you're telling me, can't you count? Can't you count? They have 4 times as many as we do and you're telling me we're too strong? You would have think that God would say, you better get a better advertising program, better marketing. We need many more soldiers. We need 4 many times as much. And you show up with this wimpy group of 32,000. But God tells them, you're too many. You're too strong. So, God tells them, tell them who, and this is in the scriptures, the people are too many. Verse 4. Take them down to the water. Well, before that, he says, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home. And that's in verse 8 of Judges 7. Whoever's afraid, sayonara, see you later. And how many leave? 22,000. So he's been weakened. And then he shows up with, how many left? 10,000. And God tells him, you're still too many. You're still too strong. So what happens? He tells him, go to the river, and those who lap up the water like a dog can stay. Those who bring the water to their hands can go. 300 remain. This is the way God forms us, fathers us. He weakens us, so we need him. Cry out to him. Learn to cry. He makes us feel defeated, allows crises in our life, because otherwise we think we can do it. We've been doing it in our life. We've survived the lack of fatherhood. We've kept busy. We've been strong. We've done pretty good. I haven't killed anybody. I'm okay. So I think I'm doing pretty good. I got a wife, children. I'm successful. Things are pretty good. But I don't know God as Father yet. That's a problem. I don't know who I am. Deep inside, I don't know who I am. So, if there are 32,000 ways that I've made up, and it's my invention, to be strong, God has to bring them down. bring them to nothing, to dust. All my inventions, all my ways to survive life, to fix my problems, to survive life, are man-made and not God's doing. And the worst thing about it, I feel deeply inside lonely, because I don't know who I am, because I haven't been fathered. This can happen in a priest. It can happen in a bishop. It can happen in a married man. And it's difficult to be a father, biological father, if you never were a son. It's all invention. You're inventing. I don't know. Since I didn't experience it. So, God has to allow things. The way He began to allow things for me, to break me down, first way was, show me my pain with my father. And I needed to get counseling with a good Catholic therapist. I need to went through a lot of healing of memories in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I had to forgive my dad, was reconciled with him. And I had to really face a lot of what I had done. I'm going to get into that later. Blessed are those who are sinners. It's a blessedness to be a sinner. Now, we're told in Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8 and 9, my ways are not your ways, nor my thoughts your thoughts. As the heavens are above the earth, so are my ways above your ways, and my thoughts above your thoughts. God's way of doing this is very different. My ways, I thought I had to be strong. God's way is, I need to weaken you so I can be the one for you. Finally, you're God. What did God do? I already mentioned the first step. I had to work through the pain. The pain to such a degree that I had to finally not resent what happened, not curse my family life, but bless it. And thank God that He allowed that, because now I can be the priest He wanted me to be. And there's a reason why He allowed that. And I had an encounter with God the Father where He spoke to me. Literally. The voice of God the Father is very different than the voice of Jesus. It affects you in a different way. You feel beloved in Jesus. You feel like His favorite son. I'm going to get into that later. So, first part was working through the pain. Allowing the pain to touch me. I had to hit rock bottom. St. John of the Cross says, and he gives a beautiful symbolism, a ball cannot ricochet high if it doesn't hit the bottom. A soul cannot be taken high in the spiritual life if it doesn't hit the rock bottom in its heart. You give yourself permission to cry, to feel your pain, and you need to communicate it with someone. If not, it's still you and I trying to figure it out and fix it. Baptism is a sacrament of dependence, not of independence. Baptism is a sacrament to create total dependence in God. So, you know you need prayer. I heard Bridge McKenna, in her book, Miracles Do Happen, that she spends 3 hours a day before the Blessed Sacrament. And Jesus even asked her in one retreat where she took away 1 hour to have more time to minister to priests, give me my hour back. And he kept a priest awake all night to tell her to give me that hour back. You've read the book, I'm sure. I know Sister Bridge. She was in Tampa for many years. So she was the sister that I was sent to talk to help discern where I was called to do this. That was one of the sources or resources that our bishop at that time used. Try to Bridge. I thought then, reading this book as a seminarian, if a sister needs to spend 3 hours a day before the Blessed Sacrament, how about a priest? So in our community, we spend at least 3 hours a day, some 4 hours a day before the Blessed Sacrament. It just we know, we just pray. We spend hours before. Why? Because if not, I need to be filled, stuffed with God. If not, I'm going to stuff myself with whatever. Because we were meant to be stuffed. We either get stuffed correctly or stuffed incorrectly. So, all that suffering, that learning to expose my woundedness, pain, and one of the ways was I learned, because when you're suffering, you only see your suffering. And you think there's nothing more than your suffering. And God seems very, very, very far away. And at the age of 25, entering the chapel at Mount St. Mary's Seminary, I went in and I told the Lord, I went into the chapel. It was a day of prayer, a day of retreat in the seminary. And as I was walking in, I heard an interesting word that came to my heart. My son, go get 2 handkerchiefs and return. I thought that was an unusual inspiration. Get 2 handkerchiefs and return. I went and got 2 handkerchiefs. I was still wearing jeans like you are. Been a long time since I wore jeans. Came back with 1 handkerchief in this pocket, 1 handkerchief in the other pocket. Knelt down before the Blessed Sacrament and I said to Jesus, you know, Lord, I have no problem crying in public. I have no problem crying in front of my brother seminaries. I will be fine that they see me crying. But let's not exaggerate. Let's not create a scene. Why have you asked me to bring 2 handkerchiefs? Isn't 1 enough? And I heard these words. 1 is for you and 1 is for me. It suddenly hit me that the Lord wanted to show me how He saw it when my father mistreated me. In other words, heaven's perspective impacted me more than what I had been thought really happened. My human perspective, riddled with pain. I wept like you have no idea. I wailed as heaven, through Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament, showed me how He saw it. And suddenly what my father did was way far away. The way heaven saw it was here. It stuffed me. It took away the pain and filled me with peace. His love was so strong I couldn't contain it. And Jesus' perspective, He was crying out to my dad. His name was Frank. I've met a Frank. Who's Frank here? I mentioned it. Okay, that's right. I said, he was screaming at my dad in the meditation, Frank, stop. He was inconsolably crying out to my dad to stop, because I was reliving the beatings. And the Lord wasn't watching coldly from a distance. He was crying out to my dad, stop. Leave the boy alone. One day I was beaten so bad that my second oldest brother thought I had gotten in a fight with 5 young men. That's how bad shape I was in. And that's one of the memories he brought to me. But this time I heard, and the voice of the Lord became loud. Louder than anything. And this is what begins and has to happen when we're being healed. Heaven has the last word, not what happened to us. What happened from outside of us, becomes small compared to the impact of what God does. That's when you begin to see and receive the blessing from God. But for this to happen, we need to be made vulnerable. Little. We need to be little enough to receive God. Because God exalts those who humble themselves. And humility has to do with truth. And I begin to face the truth. I wasn't fathered. At the age of 27, I mourned because I sat in my spiritual director's office crying like a baby because I knew my dad probably will never be able to give me what I was always wanted him to give me. And I was crying and crying and crying and crying. I had to accept the fact my father will probably never know me on this side of eternity, really. My father will never be the father I needed and longed for. And that's what did happen. He died 3 years after ordination. He never could be the father. Never told me I'm proud of you. Never. Never. But by then I was fine because I knew God was my father. I really was well. It really has become very good. Because when God fathers you, forget it. You want to talk about heaven coming very close? What else did he do to weaken me? He asked me to found a religious community to heal the family life. How do you heal family life if you've never had a family that's healthy? If you don't even have a stick figure image to follow, I would cry out, teach me. When you know nothing, you have to become little and admit it. When you know nothing about fathering, because we do call priests father, but is that just a title, or does God want to father through a priest? You betcha. And fathering through a priest has to do everything about the heart and the soul and protecting the son or the daughter, the spiritual son and daughter. That you become an island of safety that they can open up and you're not taken advantage of. That you become a place of safety where they can be little, small, and admit things, and you're still there for them. But again, it's hard to be father if you were never sonned. Even as a priest, you might be called father, but you don't have an idea who you are. So, little by little, God, the Father. Yes, you have a question. I'm sorry. Thank you. With my father. Thank you. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. 2 weeks before entering the seminary, I was in prayer. A memory came to mind, which I thought was curious. The memory was, I saw myself picking up feathers on the coast. Lima is on the coast. So to go to the beach is very close. And my father would have, as small children, go look for feathers so we could tickle him in the back of his neck with a feather. So we would get all these feathers, and then at some time or another, we would be tickling him. Now I was a grown man. I was already working as a professional. And I remember, and I said to the Lord in prayer, do you want me to get feathers? I live 3.5 hours from the beach. Where am I going to get a feather? And if you're asking me to tickle him in the back of his neck, see, I already had tried once to reconcile with him, and he threw in my face at the age of 20 all that I had done wrong, criticizing, gave me a whole list of things. So I had to take a risk. I couldn't talk to my dad. I hadn't even told him I was entering the seminary. 2 weeks later. We never had that conversation. That's how little communication we had. We talked about the weather, we talked about sports and politics. But it didn't get much deeper than that. So I said, okay, so I just closed my Bible, my prayer time. And at night, a scripture came to mind. And I don't know why, but I went to my night table. In my night table, next to my bed, there was nothing more than a Bible. That was in pieces because I read it a lot. And on top of my Bible, there was a feather this size. That was not there in the morning. Well, guess what I did that night? I went with that feather, put a chair next to him as he watched the movie, the news afterward, and I started tickling him in the back of his neck. When my left arm got tired, I moved my chair to the other side, and with my right arm, for over 3 hours, I tickled the back of his neck with a feather. I never knew what he felt, but I know one thing, that even a feather, when it's moved by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, can change a man's heart. When the movie was over, the news was over, everything was over, the rest of the family went to bed. And we were left alone. Now, they had no idea I was going to talk to him. I was very nervous. I was scared. Last time I tried this, he threw it in my face, everything I'd done wrong. So I took the chance. And I said to him, Dad, I need to talk to you. And he said, is it to tell me you're entering the seminary? Obviously my mother had told him. But like with many families that have addictions and all that garbage, there's no dialogue. There's many secrets. So what did I do? I said, Dad, I need to talk to you. Is it to tell me you're entering the seminary? No, it's true. I need to ask you forgiveness. I've wanted you dead. I've hated you. For all the years I rebelled against you. And I went on and on and on and on and on. His eyes became watery and he said, I was way too rough with you. When I heard those words, I fell in his arms. I hung from him and I kissed him all over his face. I couldn't let go of him. I wept. I filled him with snot. I'm not kidding you. I was an adult, professional, hanging on him like a little boy, kissing him. We talked for about over 20 minutes, heart to heart. First time in my life. When that was over, my mother was wondering why he wasn't coming upstairs. My dad never cried. Men don't cry. She went downstairs, saw him sitting in darkness. The lights were off. And he was just wiping tears in the dark. That was a big step for me in my healing process. And that happened right before seminary. God called me then, as I've told you, I was a seminarian. I was in Lourdes, France, right before communion time. And the call came to do what I now have, this community. I was in the seminary. What bishop is going to take a seminarian seriously to found a community? You're out of your mind. I tried to deny it. I wanted to be a Capuchin. That's the way I'll do this. So I had my own ideas how to escape the call. A call within the call. I made come-and-sees, visits with other community, trying to avoid starting this. Obviously, I'm wearing this now. I had to give in. My last group that I attempted to run, avoid founding a community, was the Missionaries of Charity of Mother Teresa of Calcutta. And they had 2 hours before the Blessed Sacrament, and every thought before the Blessed Sacrament, for my come-and-see experience, 2 hours a day before the Blessed Sacrament, and every thought was to start this. It didn't leave me. It hounded me, the hound of heaven. And finally, I gave in. Because I was so afraid. See, when you haven't had the Father's blessing, you are petrified. Then I had to find a bishop that would take me seriously and accept me as a candidate to the priesthood, ordain me with a condition to let me found this community in his diocese. My spiritual director, thank God, told me, the sky's the limit wherever God wants you. I went to give a retreat as a seminarian to a group of women in Tampa, Florida. When I was in Tampa, Florida, I heard these words in prayer. This is where I want you to begin. Oh gosh. I asked the pastor, an Irishman by the way, Mullen, his last name Mullen, Austin Mullen, and I said, who's the bishop in this diocese? He gave me his name, and he said, can you get me a meeting? I went to talk to the bishop, shaking. And I said, at the very end, he heard me for 3 hours. I said, Bishop Larkin, will you receive me as a candidate to the priesthood and let me found the community in your diocese? He said, I'll take you, I'll pay what you owe your diocese, and I'll let you start the community. You're talking miraculous. When you've had nobody else, you learn to only trust in God. But by then, there's enough peace so you can hear God. And you begin to notice He really is trustworthy, and He puts His money where His mouth is. He really backs up what He says. And most of the process is darkness. It doesn't make human sense, because it's God sense, logic, theologic. The community started. I was with my German Shepherd. You know what German Shepherds are? You call them here what? Alsatians? Okay, I love German Shepherds, because he already put me to work in a part of Tampa. Okay, thank you. And there was light. A part of Tampa that I was working, this is before I started the community, but this was all preparation. I was working in a drug zone. All my funerals were killings. I had to depend on God to survive. And I got a German Shepherd for protection. Trained him, everything, with a policeman. Excellent. So I was living in the terrible part of Tampa, area of gangs. Satanic black masses, awful part, in a part called Ybor City in Tampa, Florida. That's where I started with the community, and my first member was a German Shepherd. I cried for a month. What do I do now? I've been given permission to start this community. I was ordained at that time, 1998. I was ordained 9 years. What do I do now? And one day I had no food left. A priest friend came over. We were going to have a meal. I said, let's take a walk. So we started walking, because I wanted to avoid the topic, I have nothing to give you to eat. The only thing I had literally was water coming out of the faucet. We started walking. I was trying to avoid the issue of having a meal together. After 2 hours of doing circles, I stopped and I said, I better tell him that I don't have anything to eat. So I was going to open my mouth and say, Ken, I have nothing to give you to eat. And right when I was about to say that, someone from a pizza parlor screamed, hey, Padre, you want a pizza? And they gave me a huge family-sized pizza. And God began to show me, you admit your need, you be weak, and I'm going to meet your needs. So the whole process has been living, admitting needs, learning to cry out. In fact, as a priest, I've stuck my head twice in the tabernacle, crying, yelling. See, God had other ways of weakening me. I was kidnapped, almost executed in Peru, when I first arrived with my community, priest brothers and sisters. Always putting crises in my path, so I would need God alone. And He was the only one who would be the answer. That's the way God begins to form us to be sons. God alone suffices. It won't happen with a lot of prayer life. It'll still be us trying to be strong. If you have a problem with addictions, if you have a problem with pornography, masturbation, if you can't get close to someone, if you don't know how to know your children, you get help. It just doesn't work. God is purposely allowing that, and that's what He's providentially allowed, so you and I can need Him, but we have to admit it. So God had to do all those things. If you want to know how much I can cry when I need to, when we watch a movie that's very emotional, they put the box of Kleenex next to me in my community. They know Father is going to be crying like a baby. No problem. Now, what is our part of it? Let's go to John 14:27 and then Matthew's Gospel. I'm going to get very practical and especially talk about one particular block. It's called anger. Anger is a big issue in someone that has not had a father-son relationship. The reactions, the impulses are very strong in a young man or woman. You feel easily offended. You are hypersensitive and you're full of fear. In John 14:27, Jesus said, "My peace I give you, my peace I live with you, not as the world gives it." So the way the Lord wants to give peace, security, is not. The world is, everything has to go well, hunky-dory, just like you like it. The way the Lord does is, I'm going to give you my peace when it's impossible to have human peace. When you reach rock bottom, I'm going to show you how faithful I am. How much I'm going to be with you in everything you face. And there, and even St. Catherine of Siena said, sometimes to get peace you need to go through a war. You first go through a war. It's an uphill battle. And it's interesting that Matthew chapter 5, in the Beatitudes it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." So part of growing in sonship, in the sonship of Jesus, because it's not your sonship, He shares His sonship in your very small being. Jesus in John 17 verse 26 said, "Father, may the love you have for me be in them." Not the love you have for them, no, the love you have for me. Let them taste that. That's a lot. That's a big promise. That's a fathering I've never been fathered. But to be able to have enough room for God to give it, we need to be decreased in size. To what point? Nada, 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 says John of the Cross. Nada. Till you become nothing. I didn't say worthless. Nada. So how does God? We need to recuperate and have peace. Could I ask one of you please to stand? Could you please stand here? This is St. Augustine. St. Augustine says, always return to peace quickly. Can you start moving? I'm a surgeon. You're doing very well. You dance salsa? Okay, good. Okay, what's your first name, my brother?
John.
John, okay, John.
That was the Bishop Larkin.
Okay. Oh, really? Larkin, look at that. Okay, his name was Tom Larkin. Okay, so if I'm a surgeon and I need to operate John, if he's moving around, I cannot begin to operate. Only when he becomes still can grace work in John. The operation be done. Okay, please have a seat, John. Thank you so much. So our end, blessed are the peacemakers, is to regain peace often in whatever happens. This is our end. So for what God to apply, to do, that the precious blood of Jesus may be efficacious in us, really in our heart, not just conceptually, really work out a change that we know we are His favorite sons in the Son Jesus. We need to regain peace quickly. Whatever happens, difficulties, crises, the little stuff, the big stuff, regain peace. A good question to ask ourselves is, when something jars my life, when the cage of my life is shaken, how long does it take me to regain peace? Just close your eyes, please. Let's close our eyes, my brothers. When I'm angry, how long does it take me to regain peace? When I'm worried, when I'm afraid, when I allow myself to hit quote-unquote rock bottom, feel what's really happening, to be in touch with my heart, how long does it take me to regain peace? Please open up your eyes. To regain peace is to know you need peace. If I'm worried about anything, as a son, I need to go to the one that will give me the peace. My peace I give you. It's the peace of Jesus. It's the fruit of the Holy Spirit. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and following. It's His peace. It's not my peace. He wants to give us a supernatural peace. A supernatural peace that it's humanly impossible to get. It's a gift. So for that to happen, I need to be connected. That's why the Lord will say in John 15, remain with me as I remain in you. Remain connected. So how do I get the peace? First I tell him I don't have peace. I honestly unveil my heart as a son should do to his dad. I'm afraid. This happened. I tell him what happened. I tell him all about it. And then I tell him I need you. I become a little boy on his lap. This is all Teresa of Lisieux, the spirituality of the little child. I become small. I admit my need like that. I don't try to fabricate strength. I don't try to fake intimacy. Intimacy means interfere. So I tell him about it. I expose. I undress my heart like a little boy before my Lord in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Then I do, and let's go to 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5. And this is very practical now, but boy does it work. But my goal is regain peace quickly. Because I know if I'm agitated, and if I'm afraid, God cannot work what He has to do because I'm too agile, aggravated, frustrated, anxious. So I have to learn to rest in God, in my Father. So 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 5 says, 2 Corinthians 10:5, take every thought captive. I examine, what am I thinking? This is all discernment of spirits of Ignatius of Loyola. I take what I'm thinking and I ask myself, what am I thinking? Is this in accord with the mind of Christ? Philippians 1:5 says, 2:5, put on the mind of Christ. Is it, would Jesus think this? And number 2, what does it produce in me? If it gives me this thought, whatever I'm thinking, feeling, if it produces fear, anxiety, anger, I want to throw in the towel, then you know that movement. And this is the tougher part of working after you've stopped drinking. When you've stopped drinking, this is the work now to be done. This is all having to do with the interior life. Because God wants to be my security. If it does not produce peace, joy, hope, encouragement, it's not. If it isn't a consolation, it's a desolation, and it's not the movement of the Father through the power of the Holy Spirit. You can bank on it. You can be sure this is not of God, what I'm experiencing inside. So why am I going to listen to a liar? It's amazing how many times I go to prayer in this state and I hear the voice of Jesus tell me everything is fine. Who am I going to believe? My broken human nature or the voice of the one? Because when He says that, everything is fine, all is well, I get peace. The battle becomes, the choice becomes, do I believe him or do I believe the father of lies? This is a constant practice that I now do automatically throughout the day. When I do that and I rebuke that thought that creates fear, frustration, whatever, the opposite of peace, security, at homeness with God, it leaves and I'm back on the Father's lap. He's in my corner. And I know it. I live it, I breathe it. There's confidence, there's joy, there's hopefulness. I can face anything with him. Saint Teresa of Avila said, if it's you alone with God, you're majority. You're majority, no matter what you face. And I've had to face communists taking over the land in Peru. 50 men tried to break in with sticks and rocks to attack our workers when we were building our house of spirituality. And I had to face them. They were the ones that were armed. But I wasn't moving anymore. It was God with me and God and I with God. But you're led by God. You depend on God. You just don't initiate anything. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46 verse 10. You first have to still yourself. Peace. And then you can hear God. You become totally dependent on the Father. Now, I want to do two more things and I'll be finished for lunch. Ephesians chapter 4. I mentioned that when you have gone through this, you have real issues with anger. Is that only a problem of Latin America or is it also a problem of Ireland? Huh? Yes, you have a question? Anger. Look at that. Okay. Yes. You have something here? Oh, serenity place. Beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay. This is so wise. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference. That's grace. I would say serenity, yeah. It's resting in God. Yeah. Peace. Okay. You have another one of these? Really? Thank you very much. It's beautiful. So, Ephesians 4:26 and 27, anger. The problem with anger is that we think we're right because we feel something correctly. We think we're correct because I feel strong about it. A soul that hasn't been fathered, their anger is lit up like this. It blinds you. When I first started the community, and I was correcting the brothers, I was too harsh with them. As we say, or I say now, I killed a mosquito with a bazooka. My reaction was too strong. Paul says, be angry, or if you're angry, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and give no opportunity to the devil. Let's break that up. If you're angry, do not sin. There's an anger that isn't sinful. To feel anger in and of itself isn't a sin. It's a human emotion. So to be in touch, I have anger at this moment, that's not a sin. When is it a sin? When I don't disconnect from it immediately. Because then I get filled with what's called in the spiritual life, distorted thinking. Or as the AA calls it, stinking thinking. So, I feel anger. Up to that moment is not a sin. What I've learned to do is, and I can tell you, I'm 52 years old, anger has never served me once for the cause of love and the gospel. Not once. Not once. So, I've had a lot of practice of sinning with anger, talking with anger, hurting people with anger. Up to 6 years ago, I said, I need help with this. And God put in my path a wonderful CD by a wonderful Catholic psychologist, permanent deacon named Bob McDonald. And the CD is called Anger and Forgiveness, Lighthouse Catholic Media. Excellent, excellent. And this is what he advises. And this is what I've learned. And this is what I do now automatically, immediately. It's almost like second nature now. I feel anger, I tell myself, don't trust it. You cannot see correctly. You'll feel better in a little while. I take out my rosary and I start saying, and I don't examine it, I don't try to push it back with my will, because I tried that. For so many years, I tried to not be angry with my willpower. You know what happened? I got angrier. I reveled in it. I don't examine it. I don't examine the situation. I don't try to put reason in it. Because if not, the devil has me in its grip. He's very good at this. So I take out my rosary and I start saying, Jesus, 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 Jesus. Just the name of Jesus. What I have found is that by the time I finish, usually, the first decade of the name Jesus, I'm disconnected from the anger. I've returned to peace. If it is something that needs to be talked about, it's done with love in God's time. But I'm no longer infected. Now, what I've realized, if I don't disconnect immediately, what I began angry at becomes like a snowball effect. It grows. It began with thoughts this size, and then they become the size of the building. These people are horrendous. They're worse than Hitler. And it's called distorted thinking. And that's when you've given territory to the devil. The thoughts we are now having at that moment are no longer Christian. They are diabolical. And depending on our past, it can happen with negativity. It can happen with critical thinking. It can happen with being aware of people's faults. You can apply this to fear. You can apply this to anything that takes away your peace. It's amazing what has happened. Let me tell you something. Last year, in our community, when it's our birthday, the community goes around and tells you, the birthday boy or birthday girl, we have sisters also, an area that they think you've grown in. One of the sisters spoke up and she said, Father, since your last birthday a year ago, I can tell you, I don't think you've ever been angry this year. And I was like, in other words, God has so much worked on that area that they actually think I've never been angry. That's a little different than 6 years ago. Okay. How much time, my dear Patrick? 5 minutes. Okay. I knew I could no longer be, because my father died in 1992. I would never have my father to father me. What I have realized after many years is that when I once cursed my house because I felt isolated, unknown, and not understood at home, and used to curse that, those were the very conditions necessary to meet God the Father, so He could become my home. It began in 1998. We were preparing for the Jubilee year as a church. I was on my priest retreat before the Blessed Sacrament, And I had an experience that I went into ecstasy. My 5 senses were shot out of the water, blown out of its socket. And I had an image of a person. I couldn't see his face. And this is the words I heard. My son. My soul knew it was not Jesus. It was the Father. What does Mary smell like? Everybody says, what? Roses. God the Father, when he manifests himself, smells like a very expensive incense. And I heard these words, my son, when I see you, I see my son Jesus. I was lost. The people praying with me, a wonderful woman that has a wonderful ministry to bring priests back. She's given retreats to bishops in United States. She said to the priest praying with her over me, he's going into ecstasy. Let's go get a cup of coffee. They left me with the Father. That's 1998. 4 years ago, I was on retreat with a priest whose spiritual director was Padre Pio. This priest is one of the top exorcists in the world. Rome used to call him on the most difficult cases. He one time walked into a case of an exorcism. The person was stuck to the roof. Obviously diabolical. He was my spiritual director. I had the blessing that he be my spiritual director. He could read hearts like most people read books. First time I talked to him on the phone, he told me about my father-son relationship with details. A saintly man. He's a bi-ritual. He's both Maronite, which is an Eastern Rite, Catholic, okay? Eastern Catholic Rite. Saint Charbel Maclouf is a Maronite. And Latin Rite. He translated, he was sent by Rome to translate the Bible into Arabic for the Lebanese. He's Lebanese. Saintly man. He gave me a private retreat. He was my spirit director. And I was in silence, and I heard the Father say to me, once upon a time. And I felt in my entire being like I was being rocked back and forth, like in a rocking chair. I was a little boy. I was home. The very few words, once upon a time, made me wail in tears of love. I cried so loud, if there would have been people next to me in different rooms, I would have woken them up. I heard again, once upon a time. Every fiber of my existence was touched by the presence of the Father. It was no longer Jesus. I knew it. And the third time I heard, once upon a time there was a Philip. The bedtime story, so to speak, that he was going to tell me was about me. And then when I heard what came afterward, I literally thought I was going to die of love. There was a Philip, my only Philip. The Father loves us as we are His only one. He loves us individually. I literally thought my heart was going to burst. I went into ecstasy. I've never, up to that point, wailed so loud of pain because of His love was so great. He went on to show me why He had to allow me to be born in a family with little love. He gave me the reason why, and he told me it was necessary. He said, because of your mission. There are times when I hear him speak, I do not exaggerate, I cannot tell the difference between Jesus and me. That's how strong it is. I'm no longer aware of Philip. John 17:26. It's for real. May the love you have for me be in them. Not the love you have for them, the way you see me, the delight you see me, may it be in them. And I will finish with this symbolic imagery. I have some friends that have adopted 2 girls, little children from China. I saw them in August. They have 2 naturally born children and 2 children adopted. It would have been a cruel thing if I enter and go to their house and I see the Chinese little girls looking from the outside to family life. And the best they could get of the Kaplan, that's their last name, Kaplan family, is you can see, but you can only get so close. You can only peek in from the outside, and that's as close as you're going to get to family life. Jesus will say in Luke's gospel, if you who are evil know how to give good things to your children, how much more will your Father? My point is this. The Trinity is the family par excellence. They enjoy a family eternal relationship that's so mysterious that we're meant, because we're adopted. Jesus is son by nature. We are sons by adoption. If a good father who adopts 2 Chinese little girls know how to give family life, how much more would the Father give us? And wills for you to have. And he wants you to share in the delight how the Father sees his Son Jesus. Not because of anything we've done, not because we can earn it, but because it's a gift and it's a Trinitarian life. The Father wants to show you not how he sees you, how he sees Jesus in you. You will die. There are no words. My father wound isn't not just healed, it's blown out of the water now. It doesn't exist. It's been annihilated. I'm his favorite boy. And I don't mean that just in a concept. I mean that experientially. When I raise the host, I'm going to tell that to the priest tomorrow. What happens? Okay? And then you're ready to be father because you've been sonned. And you're his favorite son in the Son, Jesus Christ. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you so much.